Hey everyone, and hope you're having a great week. Hey there, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Kaitlin Borncamp. I'm a CPA turned nutritional therapy practitioner, and I am on a mission to help more high achievers stop trading their health so that they can die young as late in life as possible. And I am on a mission to help more high achievers stop trading their health for their wealth so that they can die young as late in life as possible. All right, I have a good one for you today. Today, we are going to be talking about protein. Protein is everywhere right now, in case you've been living under a rock. And the idea for this episode actually came to me in the shower, but not as you might be thinking about how, we kind of think about different thoughts in the shower. No, this came actually more literally because I was washing my hair and the shampoo and conditioner I was using was on the label. So the idea for this episode, I actually got the inspiration while I was in the shower, but it may not be, kind of how you might think of ideas coming to you and creativity flowing to you while you're taking a shower. No, this was actually more literal, where I was getting ready at the gym and their shampoo and conditioner, I noticed on the label actually advertised that it has amino acids in it. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. Even our shampoo and conditioner, we are now seeing, advertised on the front on the label that it has a type of protein in it, because amino acids are just the building blocks of protein. So in this episode, we'll unpack how protein is literally everywhere. I'm going to be sharing with you some interesting recent events, including a company that sold for $1 billion with a protein product, and also one that got sued that I didn't know about, and what this means for us as consumers, and more importantly, how we can use this to our advantage in our health. Because protein is having a movement for real reasons. Because protein is having a moment for real reasons. I mean, we know this. I've talked about this a lot before, where we want to anchor in on getting our protein, on prioritizing our protein in our daily nutrition, because that will lead us to more stable energy, muscle preservation, building more muscle. I mean, looking better, feeling better, all the things. But it also has a very real effect within the body as far as macronutrients go. And on to top it all off, if you are like me, you have learned a little bit about how, and to top it all off, our cells, every single one of them, are built out of protein. And so protein is something that is so important, not only for how we look and feel, but also how our metabolism performs. So let's talk about protein being everywhere. High protein is now the number one front of package claim on new food products, overtaking low fat for the first time in history. I mean, let's just stop there, because that's a really interesting concept that it's important for us as consumers to know, where high protein products are now being labeled more often, more commonly than low fat products. I actually think this is a good shift. This is a really important sign. This is a sign that the tides are turning, and also that we as consumers, our preferences matter. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, I went to the Expo West conference out in Anaheim, California, and I love samples. And so you're going on the showroom floor, and there's just hundreds of different booths with, like, some of your favorite products you'd recognize, but also a lot of up and coming companies, or maybe, a lot of more family owned companies, smaller shops that I don't necessarily see in the local food stores that I shop in. And so anyway, I absolutely loved it, because I got to get so many different samples, talk to certain founders for the smaller companies that were there. And really, I like to just walk around and notice the trends. And this was 3 years ago, and I definitely noticed the trend of protein, including, on the label of things that ordinarily else wouldn't have that much protein in them, or maybe things that already had protein in them naturally, but now, because they can, they're just like smacking on the protein label on the front of it. So it's just really interesting, as we, if you take a step back, you've probably seen this in your grocery store, or if you haven't, that's okay too, but you're probably going to start seeing it now that you've listened to this. And I think that that's really, like I said, a good sign, and it's helpful for us to eat more protein. Like, we want all of these things, But at the same time, we need to be aware of the fact that these protein enriched products can actually create some, more processed food. It doesn't necessarily always mean that the food you're eating, just because it is high protein, doesn't mean that it's healthier. One example would be the protein bar category. That's a question that I get asked a lot about is, Kaitlin, what is your favorite protein bar, or what protein bar do you recommend the most? So stay tuned because I'll share that with you at the end. Another reason that we're seeing protein everywhere is because of the GLP-1 usage rising dramatically recently. It's kind of having this boom effect right now, and it's creating a secondary market or secondary drive for higher protein, because higher protein intake is now recommended for people who are on those peptides in order to help prevent muscle loss, which again in itself is a good thing. Like, for its face value, that's good advice. Doctors should be also recommending to patients who are on a GLP-1 that you do need to prioritize protein, probably even more so if you're, somebody who is lowering the amount of food you're eating. You want to make sure you're still getting your daily protein needs. So let's unpack a few specific examples of products over the years that have been enriched with protein, starting off with Quest Nutrition. So their first product that I was introduced to, and I think it was our first kind of flagship product that made them popular, Quest Nutrition has a protein bar. And the reason why it was really popular is because it was pretty much just protein. I mean, that yes, there's a couple of other ingredients in there, but from a calorie and macronutrient perspective, it's like 25 grams of protein, a couple grams of carbs, a couple grams of fat, and then they had all these fun flavors. So it was basically like you could just have a serving of protein powder, but it would be in this like yummy, chewy bar. And I know everybody loves the flavors and things like that. And so that is one early product that I saw and that I was consuming early on in, kind of my weightlifting journey, is it was just easy. It was just really easy to get that in, and you knew what you were getting in terms of high protein versus not having any, or not having a lot of carbs or fat. And so everybody else must have thought so too, because Quest Nutrition actually sold to Simply Good Foods. They're actually the parent company of Atkins, and they sold in 2019 for $1 billion. And so what that is a representation of is everything of how important protein preference is in the market. I mean, I think in my research, I found the company Quest Nutrition at the time had yielded $87 million in revenue. And then that gave them that multiplier effect to the valuation at $1 billion. And that's, significant in the fact that they didn't have very many different products at that time. And it was anchoring in on protein. So that's just one really interesting example. Another thing that I've seen a lot on are, protein bars. And we are now seeing so much added effects, like in Nature Valley granola bars, for example. They're adding things like pea protein. They're adding things like soy protein in order to really bump up the protein in these granola bars. Another example is, if you shop at Costco, you've probably seen these, the Kodiak protein mix for pancakes. They've now enriched it to add extra protein using whey protein, which is a source of milk protein, to the pancake batter. And I mean, hey, like if you were to choose between the two, if you're going to keep eating pancakes and you were to choose between the regular pancake mix versus the one that's enriched with protein powder, yeah, I mean, it's probably going to benefit you in some way to just get the one with protein powder. I will say we should be mindful as consumers of things that are, one, still processed, and two, a lot of the proteins that have been added to some of these products, like soy protein, whey protein, can actually cause inflammation in the body. So there is some considerations, there is some downsides. But if you're wondering, like, Kaitlin, well, what would you do? What would you recommend? One of my favorite things to do is to actually get a gluten-free pancake mix, and it's in a blue bag. I'm forgetting the name of it. If you'd like the name, reach out and I'll share it with you. Gluten-free pancake mix. And then I actually add in my own grass-fed beef isolate protein that's unflavored. And so then I know I've chosen the quality of that protein. And I know you're probably like, oh my gosh, Kaitlin, like another thing to do, another thing to add to the list. Yes, but just remember, I made these shifts and changes over time. Now they're kind of part of my system. I just always have the unflavored protein in my pantry. And when we make pancakes, which is maybe a couple times a month, if that, then I just know I added an extra scoop of that. So it's not really like a big deal to me. So just wanted to share that in case that insight is helpful as to how I actually do it. Another specific product, I mean, this one is so funny, is the Cheerios Protein. So they actually launched in 2014 and they got sued for misleading labeling. And so they didn't actually really make a protein product. What they did was they just continued to make the same product of Cheerios, which is a sugar product, doubling the serving size, and then slapped the label of protein on the box. And so that led to the lawsuit. And breaking this down even further, I nerd out on this kind of stuff because I was interested. I'm like, I wonder which part of that was a problem or why did they get sued? And so apparently what they ended up doing is that because they added protein on the label, but the actual serving size of protein had 7 grams of protein compared to regular Cheerios of 3 grams of protein. Apparently, the lawsuit said that that's only a negligible difference and not enough for the high protein alternative that the branding implied. So that's really interesting. So apparently we do have standards and it needs to actually be, a significant difference in the protein, not just the negligible difference. Even more interesting to me is the fact that apparently on the Cheerio protein, it was listed, the serving size was listed as 55 grams compared to a normal Cheerio box of 28 grams for the serving size. So they weren't actually comparing the same serving size. They simply just compared different portions. And then, if you're doing the math here, it's about double the serving size. So of course you would have basically double the protein, in the serving. So they didn't really even add any protein. And then further to that, what else it said is that the Cheerios protein actually had 17 times as much sugar per serving as the original Cheerios, more than the fruity Cheerios and the frosted Cheerios, and also interestingly more than Trix and Frosted Flakes. So because you could see here, because they were increasing the serving size and the product already has sugar in it, they were increasing the servings of sugar. And so that's again like the downside, right? The downside is that we get products like protein Cheerios and quote unquote protein bars that don't actually have that much protein in them, or maybe they do have some protein in them, but they have really high amounts of sugar or carbs or other things ingredients that we don't want to be consuming. Another food product I've seen with high protein kind of pop up in the recent years is the Wild chips. It's Wild spelled WILDE. And they have a really interesting story in the sense that they are protein first, real protein based typically with chicken. And then they have created basically like a potato chip dupe. So it's crunchy, it's salty, but the base of it is chicken. I think they also have some other ones now, but they have really good flavors. Like one of my favorites is the buffalo chicken. And it's really great because you can have a snack, have a little treat with some chips, but know that you are still actually getting a protein snack as opposed to something that's just carbs like a regular potato. And the good news is that our preferences matter a lot. As consumers, what we buy and what we trend towards, individually and as a whole, matters a lot. These are sending the buying signals to these companies, including things like General Mills, all the way down to your small local mom and pop stores. They are looking for us in our buying signals and what we are choosing to buy every week at the grocery store in order to know what products they think that we'll like the most. What this means is that you vote with your dollar. Okay. I like to think about it that way in the sense that continue to choose the things that you and your family would benefit from. And even right now, if you feel like, well, Kaitlin, I'd really like to eat more healthy, but maybe it's expensive, don't feel like you have to optimize every single area. I think this is a really good example of that, where right now we have created, us as consumers, you guys, we have created a huge demand for protein. I think I even saw a recent article the other week where the whey protein supply is limited right now, and the demand is exceeding the supply, and so there's a potential shortage of whey protein because there's been so much increase in demand. The supply hasn't been able to keep up yet. So that's good news. Like I said, we have voted with our dollar. Companies hear us loud and clear. We want more protein. We need more protein. Okay, everyone's eating more protein. I really think that the next step or the next iteration and phase of this trend will be the quality of protein, as well as minimize any other ingredients that we don't want. So for example, like the added sugar or the added ingredients of natural flavors or other things like that. But for right now, companies are doing their best, and they're waiting to see what we buy, you guys. So that's another thing I would suggest is opt for the higher protein products. And be sure to tune in next week, where I'm going to be deep diving into 3 specific high protein foods side by side, the same gram count, breaking down the ingredients, breaking down the cost per serving, and breaking down which one is the best options for your protein goals. All right, so where does this leave us? So we know that there's now way more protein. Protein is everywhere. We need to be mindful of quality, and we need to be mindful of, just because it says protein on the box doesn't necessarily mean that it is even higher protein than it once was, or that it's a food product that you want to consume more of. So basically, no matter what the box says, we want to be prioritizing whole foods. Now, if you listen to me for a little while, or if you're a client of mine, you know that I follow the principle of the 80-20 rule: 80% whole foods and 20% processed foods. Okay, so these categories of anything that comes in a box or comes in a bag is generally still going to be in that processed food category, even if it is high protein. Okay. There's one example I like to use. Years ago when I was coaching a group of women and we were chatting about, gluten-free and weight loss and different strategies that we can use. And it was like, my conclusion in my own health journey has been that gluten-free brownies are still brownies, right? Like, just because it was gluten-free doesn't mean it doesn't have the sugar and the calories and everything else in it, right? Just because a food is high protein doesn't mean it's not a processed food. Okay. And by now you might be wondering, Kaitlin, what is your favorite protein bar when you're on the go and something that is high quality and something that has minimal or no sugar? Okay. The answer is really simple. The original protein bar, you guys, is a jerky stick, right? A piece of meat. And now there are so many great companies out there. I like to eat ones from Paleo Valley, but there are a lot of good brands if you just check your local store. Find one that you like the flavor of. Jerky sticks are the way to go if you need a mid-afternoon, protein pick-me-up. And that's for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, by the ingredients that they're going to be generally 100% protein. They're going to be an animal source protein, which means that they're even more bioavailable, which leads itself to be more digested and more usable by our bodies from a nutrition standpoint. And so I think that's also that could be an entire episode in itself. So if you're curious to learn more on that, let me know, because I know that understanding the different sources of food was a huge unlock for me in my nutrition journey. And what that could mean for you is that if you are somebody who's counting calories, counting macros, or you're wanting to hit your daily protein goal, then you would be curious to know that we actually are able to digest and absorb meat products at a higher rate than plant-based products and at a higher rate than processed products. Okay, so that is really important to remember. So go out and buy your jerky sticks. If you want to know my favorite brand, go ahead and check out Paleo Valley. They are a female-owned company out of Boulder, Colorado. So I'm also a fan for that reason. All right, until next time, my friends, stay healthy. Just a reminder that the information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended to be medical advice. It should not be used to treat, diagnose, or cure any medical condition. Always consult your physician or qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your health regimen or medications. Kaitlin Borncamp and Health Supply LLC, DBA Feel Great with Kait, disclaim any liability for outcomes resulting from the use of this content.